He wore the uniform of a soldier, a man who served his country with pride. But on one ordinary night, none of that mattered. Flashing lights cut through the dark, and in the next breath, everything turned deadly. A man sworn to protect and a man sworn to serve. Yet only one walked away. What unfolded on that street would shake not just a family, but the halls of power themselves. The question is, when justice wears a badge, who holds it accountable? Sergeant Marcus Hill was no stranger to discipline, long nights, and sacrifice. After years of service, he carried himself with quiet pride, respected in uniform, and deeply loved by the family waiting for him back home. To his neighbors, he was steady, reliable, the kind of man who waved at kids riding bikes and helped carry groceries for the elderly down the block. His world wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. That evening, he had just left a late shift at the base. The air was still, heavy with the kind of silence only broken by the distant hum of traffic. Marcus tightened his jacket against the night breeze, mind already on dinner and the laughter he'd soon hear when he walked through his door. But just a few streets away, something else was unfolding, something he couldn't see, yet was already closing in. A patrol car rolled slowly past, its headlights lingering on him longer than they should have. Inside, eyes fixed on Marcus with a different kind of intent. He had no way of knowing that his ordinary walk home was about to collide with prejudice, suspicion, and a gun pointed at his chest. Marcus kept walking, his boots striking the pavement in a steady rhythm. But he could feel it now, the weight of headlights trailing him, pressing against his back like an unspoken threat. The patrol car crept closer, too slow to pass, too deliberate to ignore. He didn't break stride. He'd learned long ago that any sudden movement, any sign of fear, could be twisted into something it wasn't. Then came the sharp sound of a door slamming. Heavy footsteps echoed behind him. "Hey, you there?" Marcus turned, calm but cautious. The officer's eyes locked on him, scanning him up and down like he was already guilty of something. "Where you headed?" the cop barked. "Home," Marcus answered evenly, his Army ID badge still clipped to his bag. But the officer's gaze never softened. The questions came rapid fire. "What are you doing out here? Why the street? Do you live around here?" Each one sharper than the last, laced with suspicion that had no reason behind it. Marcus tried to stay steady, tried to remember the drills he'd done overseas to keep his nerves in check. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was his own neighborhood. And still, he was treated like a threat. The officer's hand drifted toward his holster. Marcus froze. Every instinct screamed at him to speak, to de-escalate, to show his hands clearly. He raised them slowly, palms open, his voice calm. "Sir, I'm Sergeant Hill, U.S. Army. I live 3 blocks down. I'm just heading home." But the words didn't matter. The officer's eyes narrowed, his voice rising. "Don't move." Blue and red lights painted the walls around them as another patrol car pulled up. Now there were 2. Marcus stood under the glow, alone in the center, his heart pounding. He thought about his family waiting at home, about the little girl who would run to him at the door, and the dinner growing cold on the table. And then, in the split second it takes for suspicion to turn into violence, a shout pierced the night. "Gun!" Marcus didn't have one. He hadn't even reached for anything. But the officer's hand was already moving, already unholstering, already raising. The world seemed to slow, his mind flashing through every headline, every name he'd ever read about men who looked like him, men who never made it home. A shot cracked through the silence. Then another. The street that had once felt safe now echoed with chaos. Neighbors peeked from windows, recording on shaky phones, voices gasping in disbelief. Marcus hit the ground, the weight of injustice pressing heavier than the bullets themselves. But what neither officer knew was that this night would not end quietly. Because the call that followed, the name on the reports, the badge number, the uniform discarded in the street, would soon reach far beyond that block. It would reach the Pentagon, and justice was coming. The crack of the gunshot tore through the night, echoing down the quiet street like a war zone Marcus thought he'd left behind. His body hit the pavement, breath stolen from his lungs. The searing pain spread like fire, But worse than the pain was the realization. It didn't matter that he wore the nation's uniform. To them, in this moment, he was just another target. The officers shouted over each other, their words blurring into chaos. "Stop resisting. Get your hands up." But Marcus's hands were already in the air, trembling, blood dripping onto the concrete. The crowd that had gathered gasped, phones raised high, recording every second. Somewhere a child cried. Marcus tried to speak, his voice ragged. "I'm a soldier. I serve this country." His words trailed, swallowed by the flashing lights and the weight of disbelief pressing down on everyone who watched. Another officer stepped forward, cuffs in hand, as if the bleeding man before them was still a threat. Marcus's vision blurred, but his mind burned with one thought. If this is how they treat me, what chance does anyone else have? The air was electric, thick with anger and fear. Every eye on that street knew this wasn't just another arrest gone wrong. This was injustice laid bare, undeniable and unfiltered, caught live on countless screens. And just as the sirens of approaching backup screamed louder, a new sound cut through the night, commanding, unyielding. "Stand down." Now, the crowd turned. Uniforms unlike any local police stepped into the light. Their presence shifted everything. The officers who once held power suddenly froze, faces pale as stone, because these weren't ordinary reinforcements. The Pentagon had arrived. Marcus survived that night, but survival did not mean peace. The bullets missed his heart, but the scars they left were deeper than flesh. The image of badges raised against him, the disbelief in the officer's eyes when he said, "I serve this country," would never fade. For his family, every ring of the phone now carried a question they could never shake. Would he come home this time? The Pentagon's arrival changed the headlines, but it didn't erase the truth. Marcus's story was not an isolated tragedy. It was a mirror reflecting a system where skin color could erase a lifetime of honor, discipline, and sacrifice. Even in uniform, even with a record of service, he was not protected from prejudice. The footage spread quickly, shared, debated, dissected. Millions watched. Some saw the bravery of a soldier wronged. Others saw proof of what communities have been shouting for years. That racism in power does not ask questions. It assumes, it acts, it destroys. Marcus became a symbol, not by choice, but by circumstance. His wounds healed slowly, but his story carried a weight that could not be ignored. And so the question lingers, not just for Marcus, but for all of us. How many more uniforms must be stained? How many more lives shattered before justice means the same thing for everyone? Because in the end, this was never just about one man, one street, or one night. It was about a truth America still struggles to face. The story of Marcus Hill isn't just his. It's ours. So what will we do with it? Disclaimer. The stories shared on this channel are entirely fictional and created solely for entertainment purposes. We believe in a world where everyone is treated with fairness, dignity, and equal rights under the law. Our goal is to present thought-provoking narratives that inspire reflection and positive change in society. Any resemblance to actual persons, events, or organizations is purely coincidental and unintentional. These stories are not based on real events, nor do they carry political, religious, or ideological implications.